Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give people a couple minutes to come in. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deidre Linares, and I will be your organizer today. Thank you for joining us for the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and available for all attendees. You'll receive a follow-up email within 2 business days with a link to the recording. At the conclusion of the webinar, there will be a survey that you will need to complete in order to receive credit and your certificate for attending this webinar in the Workforce Registry. If you're unable to complete the survey at the conclusion of the webinar, it will be included in your follow-up email. Please submit your questions or comments using the question panel, which can be found on the lower right-hand side. Now I will hand you over to your presenter, Eve Robinson.
Good afternoon. This is Eve Robinson. I'm the project director for the Grow NJ Kids Regional Technical Support Center in the North Region. We cover 7 counties in the North Region, including Bergen, Passaic, Sussex, Warren, Hunterdon, Morris, and Union counties. I'm happy to welcome you to one of our webinars that we give regularly to our enrolled centers, any enrolled center in Grow NJ Kids. We try to focus on topics that are useful and can be helpful to those who are going through the quality rating improvement process. We're happy that you joined us today, and I'm happy to be with you. Today, what I want to talk about is child development and those people who have studied children in the past and created theories of how children grow, develop, and learn. And what I want to do with those principles is now apply them to how those principles actually look like, what they look like in our classrooms and in our providers' homes and in any place where we get together with groups of children. Because the key to understanding what's going on in a classroom or what's going on in a family provider is to understand these basic theories of development. So what I've done is I've organized 6 of the principles of child development and put them into these slides so that we can talk about them today. So what I want to talk about is, why does it impact our classrooms? The history of child development started when adults became interested in how learning takes place. Interestingly, historically, people weren't interested in children. People thought of children as mini adults, and children were expected to behave like adults beginning at an early age, and they were put to work, and it wasn't seen as a distinct part of of growth. But for some, even as early as the Greek civilization, children were seen as an important link to maintaining society, so they did start to try to bring knowledge to them through tutoring or mentoring. Today, those who created theoretical approaches to child development and learning play an important role in our everyday practice in the classroom. In addition, when we conduct developmental assessments to better plan for our students, we are also using theoretical approaches. So I know theoretical approaches can sound very academic, and what does that have to do with what I do every day? But in truth, what we're doing every day very much relies on these theoretical approaches and can be informed by these theoretical approaches, and in fact can help us to have better classroom management, better classroom activities, and have better and more fruitful experiences for both the children and the teachers. And so that's why I've organized these theories and tried to help us see how we can turn those theories into practice in the classroom. When we use that approach, it helps us frame our work, as I said, and give it purpose. In early childhood, using it helps us to do the following things. One thing it helps us do is plan our day, because if we know, first of all, physically about a child's development, we can understand the difference between active play and quiet play. We can also, in using a theoretical approach, help to respond to children's needs, both group needs as well as individual needs. Another reason we use a theoretical approach is it helps us to discuss and also be able to articulate what goes on in our classrooms and how that impacts each child. We can discuss that with the families. The whole connection and partnership between classroom and family is a very, very vital part of early childhood education. And one of the things that those of us who are in the classrooms can do is assist families in understanding their children. And one of the ways that we do that is by understanding development and how their child is developing and being able to describe that. So I see that as a really important one. I also see the theoretical approach helping us to implement a curriculum that will then meet the social, the emotional, the physical, and the cognitive needs of children. A high quality curriculum includes all of those different aspects and is taken from a theoretical approach. A high quality curriculum gives everyone an opportunity to succeed in group settings. And that's why they use a theoretical background approach to implement these curriculum. So that's, in my mind, why theory matters. It also matters because it helps us to feel like, as practitioners, feel like we are actually grounded in some sort of practice that is meaningful. And I believe very much that the practice of early childhood education is very meaningful. And the work that we are doing with the youngest of our children is the most impactful. So I have listed on here, and I won't have time to go over them in detail, but I did list some of the leading theorists that we have in child development. You'll notice some of them go all the way up to today, as Barry Brazelton, but many of them are from centuries ago. And that's an interesting thing to look at, is that centuries ago, even as far back as Jean-Jacques Rousseau in the 18th century, we're looking at how do we best serve the needs of children as they develop. And as I mentioned, for many centuries, children's needs, children's ability to grow and develop was not even an interest. It was not even on, people didn't have any interest in understanding that. But Rousseau and others started to look at children and say, how can we help them benefit and grow into the kinds of adults that we need to continue our society. Of course, many of you have heard of Sigmund Freud, who looked at psychological development very carefully. John Dewey was an educator who was a framer of our current compulsory education system in this country, and had a large impact into having influence on how children learn. Jean Piaget had a large impact in understanding the cognitive or intellectual development of children. And many of the activities that are done in the early childhood classroom are based on the theories that Jean Piaget worked on all those years ago. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian psychologist who also had a large impact on understanding the social nature of children's learning and how the interaction of children with one another really impacted and was vital to their learning and development. Arnold Gesell was one of the first pediatricians and physicians who recognized that not only were children's health and physical needs important, but also their developmental needs. He was one of the first doctors who studied development in young children. Dr. Erik Erikson, again, a psychiatrist, looked at the social and emotional growth of human beings. And he particularly focused on the tasks that during each stage of life one has to acquire or master. And in particular, with young children, those tasks are very vital. The tasks for children 0 to 5. So Erikson has been very important. Of course, many of you have heard of Maria Montessori and her work with children and her educational approach. Many people still use her educational approach today, and she had very strong beliefs about the way that children learn and the impact that the environment in the classroom had on that learning. I also added Mary Ainsworth to this because Mary Ainsworth did a lot of interesting work in the development of attachment in young children. And the attachment or bonding process in young children is vital for their early development. And so understanding how children have experienced attachment and bonding with their first caregivers has a large impact on how they behave once they get into group settings or when they're in group settings. And Barry Brazelton, Dr. Barry Brazelton, another pediatrician who did a lot of work in child development and was groundbreaking in coming up with various approaches to supporting families. He focused on supporting families in their ability to support the learning and growth of their children. So these were all significant people who have impacted the field of early childhood education. And I would encourage anyone to get more information and learn more. I'm going to reference a book at the end of the webinar called Theories of Childhood that has an introduction to several of these theorists, and I highly recommend it as it's easy reading and very accessible reading, and it is geared very much to those who are directly working in the child care field. So let's move on, and I will give you the 6 theoretical principles that I believe can be applied to teaching young children. Number 1, children learn best when their physical needs are met and they feel psychologically safe and secure. So you see in this one, and we're going to talk about each one, I've included both physical needs, understanding those, but also the psychological feelings of being safe and secure. Some of the things I just talked about with bonding and attachment. The second is children construct knowledge, and we'll talk about the ways I want to hear from you about ways in which you think children construct knowledge. The third is children learn through social interaction with other adults and other children. And again, I want to emphasize that it says other adults and other children. Of course, the fourth is something we talk about all the time, but we can't say it enough because for some reason, outside of the realm of early childhood education, some people are still in the dark about this. And that is children learn through play. And we could talk a little bit about what that word play means and how it intersects with children's learning. The fifth theoretical principle is that children's interests and, quote, need to know, unquote, motivate learning. And we'll talk a little bit about how in the classroom we can find out about children's interests and then feature those interests in the organization of our day-to-day practice. And the last one is human development and learning are characterized by individual variation. So again, understanding child development and the principles of child development help those of us in the classroom to be able to recognize the needs of each learner that's in that classroom, while at the same time addressing the needs of the group. And that's a very, very important aspect that we'll get to. So I'm going to move on and we'll start the interactive part. So let's look again at principle 1. Children learn best when their physical needs are met and they feel psychologically safe and secure. So one thing that's very true about early childhood is that it respects the biological needs of children. And I put here as an example, children are not made to sit and attend to paperwork or listen to adult lectures for long periods of time. We've all seen the results, and even in adults, by the way, sitting for long periods of time is not always the best way to learn. But we know biologically that the need for children to be moving and the need for children to be stimulated in various ways can be very, very salient to how they are going to actually learn. So that my next bullet speaks to this, high quality early childhood education offers both active play and periods of quiet, restful activity. And thirdly, an environment that's safe and secure is one where everyone is accepted. So feeling psychologically safe and secure is something we have to work at, helping the children feel psychologically secure. We have to really work at that. So let's think about this principle for a minute. And if you can, in the chat box, think about it. And if you're in a group, maybe think with each other. Think with each other about what you do in your classrooms and what do you do to create safety. I could look at your answers if you want to chat, put them in the chat box. Can you give examples of when your classroom is involved in active play and when they're involved in quiet activities and what they might be? And how do you characterize those? And also the last one, how do you make all students feel accepted and welcome under this principle that children need these kinds of environments? So I'll give you a minute, see if anybody wants to type in and chime in and give me some examples from what you do in your classrooms. So if you look at the picture, you see that they are engaged in a group activity right there. And some of the children seem to be having a quieter time than others. And so sometimes group activities take on that kind of atmosphere. So if you want to type in an answer, go right ahead. If not, we can keep
Okay,
moving.
Eve, we have one question that came in through to the question box instead. And it is classroom rules that are clear.
Oh, okay. Classroom rules that are clear. That's how you create safety, and that's really important. One of the things that we know from developmental theory is that children are concrete thinkers and that children need to hear things in a concrete manner. And one of the ways that we create safety, yes, is by creating classroom rules and letting children know what they can do during the time they are in class. Children feel safer when they know what the routines are. Children do not feel psychologically safe or sound if they don't know what to expect. So I appreciate that, and I think that is a good example. Any others?
Okay, I think we're having an issue with getting this to so everyone can see, but I'm going to read it out for everybody. I have two more examples.
Okay.
Think, pair, share.
Say it again.
Partner. Think, pair, share.
Okay.
Partner, buddy system.
Mm-hmm.
Establish rules from the door and
Mm-hmm.
review before each transition through the day. And then I have another one, classroom organization.
Classroom organization, yes. I like think, pair, share too. I think these are very good examples of how we create environments where children feel psychologically safe and sound and having feel accepted and welcome. The buddy system, absolutely, absolutely is a way for children to feel accepted. Establish rules from the door. We talked about children cognitively need this concrete information so they know how to behave. And also reviewing it before the transitions. I like that as well. Again, engage with every child, not just one in particular. And I like that too. Oftentimes, what happens in a classroom is one child in particular seems to be the one who gets a lot of attention or has attention drawn to them. And oftentimes that can have a negative impact on feeling psychologically safe and sound. And I think that making sure that each child is engaged with in some manner will make that difference. And I also agree, taking turns, giving children a chance to understand what it means to wait. And developmentally, that is something that children are learning at this time. So we know that another way to feel psychologically safe and sound is to be able to regulate your feelings. And learning to regulate your feelings is an essential part of the early childhood classroom. So those were great. I really like those. And of course, we're going to talk more about classroom organization. And making sure that when there's active play and quiet activities, there's room in the classroom for both. And classroom organization and space setup actually speaks to a lot of that. See if there's no others. I'm going to move on because there's 6 of them and we're only on 1. Here's number 2. Children construct knowledge. So knowledge is constructed or built as a result of the dynamic interactions between a child and a physical and the social environment. So one of the ways children learn is by having an environment that speaks to their own learning needs. So it's not just through interacting with the teacher or the other children, it's actually through their interaction with that physical space and what is included in that physical space. And that is very much how children learn. We learn developmentally that children are tactile. Children learn through their senses. This is the sensory motor stage that Piaget talks about. That is very much should be a part of an early childhood classroom. So they discover their knowledge through active experimentation, not being told. And, here we also know that words have different meaning to children than they do to adults. And so experimentation, interacting with the physical environment is as important as the words. And central to this experimentation is being able to make what we would call constructive errors that are necessary because you've got to try things out. These are things that are necessary to the development, cognitive development, as well as the physical development of children. And we know from Piaget, again, that children need to try and then try again, because this is the way they learn. And also from Vygotsky, who talks about scaffolding learning and how the interaction in the social environment constructs the learning of the child on all the other realms. Also, children need to form their own hypotheses and keep trying them out. Again, constructive errors through both mental actions and through physical manipulations. observing what happens, comparing their findings, asking questions, discovering answers, and adjust the model or alter the mental structures to account for the new information. So again, this is a developmental theory about children constructing their knowledge and how they can actually practice learning about different parts of their own world. And so let's look at what are some classroom projects that would assist children in constructing knowledge, and also other ways that you have done that have encouraged the process of learning. What kinds of activities have you put into a classroom that have given the children an opportunity to construct their own knowledge or to build on knowledge that the children have and then pass on to others? So think about that. Okay.
Okay, I have one example. Provide activities that are designed to be done in groups.
Okay. Design activities that should be done in groups, because one of the ways that we can scaffold knowledge is finding out what the children know and how they know it. Okay. I see also, was this one creating an environment that allows mistakes? And that I really like. How can we in the classroom create an environment where it is not set, the stage is not fully set. The stage has to be filled in by the children, and they're going to make mistakes along the way, and there's room for those mistakes. And I think also not only mistakes, but opportunities where two or more children can engage with each other and practice whatever it is they're trying to do. And that way they learn from each other. Anything else about constructing knowledge?
Another one, design 2 to 3 different kinds of group activities so every child can rotate or go to the one they like better. Therefore,
Okay.
none of the children will be left out.
Great idea. So this is a great example of how the physical environment of the early childhood classroom constructs knowledge and looks developmentally at what children need. So in order to do this, we need to have enough projects or enough activities in the room that will stimulate the interests of the children. Not all the children will be interested in the same activity at the same time. And so thinking ahead to possible types of interactions that the children can have in different areas of the room, perhaps around the same theme, but with different activities, could help spur that construction of knowledge and that interaction with the children in small groups. I do see the next one that says cooperative games, which I love. And cooperative games are a great example of how children construct knowledge and learn from each other. Because rather than adults setting up the games, sometimes it's great to watch the children do that themselves and see how they form the rules and how they interact with one another when mistakes are made, when someone drops something or can't keep up or whatever. I think it's really important to give those children an opportunity to take part in these cooperative games with each other and maybe even create them. Only give them the bare minimum of what they need and see what kind of game they're going to create. I think one of the things we know from developmental theory is that children do not learn best when they are directed. Children learn best by being facilitated to interact with the environment. And so these types of examples that you're giving here are the kinds of examples that will actually spur learning in the children and are developmentally sound. Okay. Any others? I like these, and I appreciate you taking part in thinking about these kinds of things. And I know that if many of you are using one of the high quality research-based curriculum that we are offering through GrowNJ Kids, that many of the activities that you will see in those curriculum will be geared in this way. And many of the suggestions that they give for constructing the classroom will be given that way. And this is why, because it fits in with the cognitive developmental needs of the children, the physical needs of the children, and most importantly, the social and emotional needs of the children at this time, the tasks they need to master from the ages of 0 to 5 in terms of being able to interact not only safely in an environment, but safely with other people and other children. Okay, so we can, any others? Go type them in, it's fine. I can see them if you type them in. There seems to be a delay when I get them, but they're there. Okay, so let's move to, whoops, I think I lost my, there. Principle 3, children learn through social, what I was just saying, through social interaction with other adults and other children. And I love this one because it's vital that we see the difference. And this speaks to what what I was speaking about with Mary Ainsworth, the parent-child relationship and a child's attachment to his or her primary caregiver. That is, a parent is a child's first teacher. We've noted that in other webinars. And one of the things that they come to your classrooms with is that experience, and their experience of learning how to communicate their needs, how to respond when an adult speaks to them, how to listen. All of those kinds of things come from the child's first relationship, which is the parent-child relationship. So the opportunity that we have in early childhood is to encourage and foster the primary relationship, as well as promoting then next relationships with peers and with other adults who are not the primary caregivers, and supporting the children's effort to create friendships. And then this whole thing leads to the child being able to function as an independent being. And the child as an independent being is a gradual process. And those of you who work in centers where you see the growth from, let's say, infancy to toddlerhood to a preschool age child, you see the gradual growth that takes place around self-regulation, around interaction, and around how to make friendships. That is a process that starts with the youngest children. And once they get to a point where they can function independently and they see themselves as an individual in the midst of a group of other children, this is a very important milestone in development. And we as early childhood providers are providing them with that opportunity. And the teacher's role that the teacher takes in this gradual process includes supporting, guiding, and facilitating development, and also learning through social interactions in the classroom. And also, a very big piece here is that the caregiver is doing the next step to what the parent was doing, which is the teacher or the caregiver is modeling appropriate behaviors. We in the early childhood classroom, they're watching everything we do, aren't they? Children notice everything about us. They notice what we're wearing. We notice where we have glasses, if we don't have glasses, where what kind of shoes we're wearing. They notice everything about us, and they are noting it and watching it. They also notice the tone of our voice, the words that we use. And I know many of us know that what kind of environment, we often think about what kind of environment a child may be experiencing when they come to school and speak to us in certain ways. So this is also true of the early childhood classroom. the teacher is a model of appropriate behavior between two adults. We always have two adults in the classroom, so how those two adults are speaking to one another, as well as appropriate behavior between adults and children, and what appropriate behavior and language looks like between an adult and a child. And this is very, very critical. It's a critical time in a child's life because they are just learning words. They're learning to put words on feelings. And that is a huge milestone in social emotional development. So let's talk about what we can do to help children learn through social interaction with other adults and other children. So can you give me some examples in the chat box of how children do create friendships in a classroom and what you've seen in your classrooms that has assisted with that process? And can you also give me some examples of how the teachers have created a model, as I just said, for adult-child relationships? An example of how that's done in your classroom or program. And also an example of how to promote social independence. What are some of the things we do in the early childhood classroom that promotes this social independence? I'll take a drink of water while you're coming up with your answers.
Okay, we have one suggestion: provide opportunities for choices.
Okay. Absolutely. One of the best ways to model adult-child relationships is to give the child a sense of autonomy. So one of the things Erikson talks about in his second stage of development is the development of autonomy. And here's another: child-initiated interactions and free play. And so one of the things that Erikson talked about is a child being able to have the opportunity to feel autonomous and feel that they have chance to try things out and have choices. And we can do that in our classrooms. So we are using Erikson's theory when we engage in child-initiated interactions, when we provide that free play. So free play is not just something, we have to let them do whatever they want. It is much more calculating than that. It is an opportunity for the children to practice creating friendships, as well as adult-child relationships, and also promote social independence. When children are able to make their own choices and they start to feel more autonomous, they also feel that they have a sense of their own regulation. This can't be forced into them. It's something they have to develop from within. And so when we do this in the early childhood classroom, this also can be articulated to the families. This can be talked about as a way that you can assist your child's development as well at home by giving them opportunities to take part in things that they initiated, rather than, and with families, oftentimes children get picked up and get taken wherever the parent needs to go. And sometimes we need to remind families that children also need that opportunity to initiate their own goals and where they want to go. And I was a child care center director for many years, and this was one of the things I spent a lot of time talking to parents about. What is your life like with your children, and how much is it about what you adults need to do and the children need to come along, and how much is it about what the children need and how you can make your home environment have those choices in it. And it is a discussion you want to be able to have with families, because when you look at these three girls in the picture, for instance, they're engaging in their own interactions with the sand. However, they're engaging together and being able to relate to one another. And I think free play gives them that opportunity. Great. I appreciate everybody's input. And I noticed a typo under activity. I have to fix that. Principle number 4, children learn through play. And as much as we know this, we always need to hear it again, and we need to talk about it. And developmental theorists, going all the way back to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Rousseau was convinced that it was only through play that children would learn to grow and develop. He was really the first, all those centuries ago, to notice the intricate nature of children's play and how important it was to their ultimate overall learning and growth. And here are the things it provides. It provides exploration. It provides experimentation that we've just been talking about. It also provides time for manipulation of the environment. And these are essential pieces of what we call constructing knowledge. Play also contributes to the development of what's coming next in cognitive development, which is representational thought. So when we move out of the sensory motor stage and we start to really understand things around us and what they stand for and what they are about, rather than just being about when babies are all about themselves and what they're feeling and thinking, they learn this through play. They learn this through play and interacting with materials as well as with other people. And during play, children examine and refine their learning in light of the feedback they receive from the environment. So that's critical right there, and from other people. It's through play that children develop their imaginations and creativity. So it isn't only learning facts, or it isn't only being able to answer questions. It's more about children having the opportunity to dream and think and engage in a creative process. And our classrooms are a wonderful place for children to be able to do that. And, you know, going back to in the chat box, someone wrote free play. Free play is the cornerstone for all of that. And really engaging children's imaginations is the best way to build self-confidence in children, because if they feel free to imagine and dream, they are going to feel ready to be creative. But we need to stimulate that. During the primary grades, when they get older, children's play will become more rule-oriented, and this will help promote the development of autonomy and cooperation, and all of that contributes to these different areas of development. So our classrooms are setting the stage for children to be able to learn in more concrete ways and or in more rule-oriented and organized ways. But what they're doing in our classrooms is vital to setting that up. And our classrooms are vital. It's very important that children have this opportunity, and I would argue all the way through 3rd grade, to be able to engage in the process of engaging in their environment and free play and opportunities to develop their imaginations and creativity. So can you give me some examples of how at your classroom, in your classroom or center, you're encouraging learning in young children, how children can gain knowledge and intelligence through play, and in your classrooms, how your teachers are encouraging play that leads to new knowledge? Can you give me an example of some sort of play that initiated and brought about some new knowledge for children? Think about those for a minute. Okay, singing, absolutely. What happens with singing? Singing is a really good example, because singing is something that, first of all, helps children focus on words, but also helps children focus on their own inner sense of what music feels like. Music is a great catalyst for children's imagination, because music and singing can also spur movement. It can also spur games. There's a lot that can happen with engaging children in singing songs. And a lot of times they like to sing the same songs over and over again. You know, children like repetition. And so songs are something where you can continue to build learning by continuing to use the songs. Okay, creating rich environments and is it reach environments or rich? I think rich. And positioning materials strategically. Yes, absolutely. I think that children's the classroom has a great opportunity to be moved around and changed periodically, so that the children are stimulated by what they see in the room, and this will spur them to interact differently based on how those materials are positioned. Yes, creating games that relate to letters, words, numbers, animals, etc. Exactly. One of the things that we can do is embed into the play activities that are in the early childhood classroom, embed our literacy goals, embed our letters or numbers, but make them fit with whatever the activity is, whatever it's the song or the finger play or whatever it is. And we can actually create games that have the colors embedded in it. We can create games that have different letters embedded in it, or animals. I like that too. The matching games, absolutely, with objects, and also story time. Story time is a wonderful time when children share with one another. Specifically, when we do story time, if we give the children an opportunity to reflect on what was told, what was said in the story, and to have a give and take with the children during story time. It's not so much only about listening, it's about listening and involving the children in what's going on. Yep. Good. Okay, I'm going to move ahead to principle 5, unless there's any more that you wanted to. I like those. Creating games and the matching games, and also story time. Thank you very much for those. But children learning through play is really a central principle here, and one that we have to constantly be able to articulate to our families, to our legislatures, to our communities, to everyone, the importance of children being able to play. Okay. So the fifth one, children's interests and, quote, need to know, unquote, motivate learning. So first of all, most children, all children are completely motivated learners because they are born learning. Infants are learning from the get-go. And so the important thing is to recognize that, and that everything that children are taking part in, and infants, toddlers, preschoolers, all of it, they need to make sense of their experiences. And the way we construct our classrooms helps them make sense of their experiences. The teachers help this process by identifying what intrigues children and then allows the students to solve the problems together. So again, it's not about the teacher knowing everything and the children not knowing everything. It's about the teacher identifying what things the children do know and what intrigues them to want to know more. And I like that word, intrigues, because it's not just about, oh, I like dinosaurs. It's, well, what is it about dinosaurs? And dinosaurs is one thing that a lot of teachers like to use, even though it's not really part of a child's everyday experience. but we allow the children to solve the problems together rather than giving them all the answers. So when we have classroom activities that are based on a child's interest, this is going to provide a motivation for learning. I can't stress that enough, and I think it's grounded in good developmental theory that children learn best when they are interested and when they are stimulated by whatever it is we are offering. Children love to learn, but children don't like to be forced to learn. And there is a difference. Children will be very motivated learners given the best environment. Children will be very distracted and non-interested learners if we are forcing on them things that are not developmentally appropriate for them or are not part of their interest right now. Letters may not be where they're interested. There are ways we can embed letters into activities that do interest them. But by pushing just the letters, when the child is not interested, you are not going to get a love of learning, curiosity, attention, and self-direction. And this is key. This is a key element to helping children prepare themselves to become lifelong learners and preparing everyone to become lifelong learners. And we in early childhood have this opportunity by the way we organize and operate our classrooms and our interactions with children. Okay, I'm going to go to the activity and ask you, how do teachers discover what intrigues children in the classroom? Can you give me an example? Oh, I saw bingo. That's a good, that was for the last one. How to create a project that takes the interests of children into account, and the types of activities or projects that children can complete in groups. So can you tell me how, as teachers in a classroom, can we discover things that are intriguing children? What ways can we tap into that? Okay, someone said circle time, and that's true. And what can we do during circle time that will do that? What are some of the ways that teachers find out about the things that intrigue children? And then from there, okay, so circle time is one. Another would be, and I don't know if everyone has heard of this, but you can also make lists or webs of what children know about. So if you pick a certain topic, like butterflies, I just came to me, butterflies, and ask the children, what is it that you know about butterflies? And the children will tell you things. They have wings, they fly. Some of them might tell you that butterflies come from a cocoon. We'll find out and then ask them, well, what do you want to know about butterflies? So involving children in planning is asking them, what kinds of things do you want to know about butterflies? And the children then get the opportunity to be involved in the learning activity. Small group time is another way to discover what intrigues the children, because you can sit with a child individually and find out who that child is and watch. I think another piece here that's very important is observation. Yes, and ensure that the project has activities that speak to all learning styles. So if we're creating a project about butterflies and we're creating something that speaks to all learners, we're going to have to make sure that all the activities are not just about reading a book about butterflies or doing a science project about butterflies, but that we address everyone's needs. Maybe we're going to sing a song about butterflies. Maybe we're going to create some artwork about butterflies. Maybe we're going to do outdoor play that has to do with butterflies. That's how we take the interests of the children into account. And so yes, music class is a good example. Ask the children what they know about music instruments, or in art, let the children identify the colors. These are all really good examples of activities and projects that children can do in groups that will stimulate their learning. I'm going to move to the next one because we're almost done. And this is about individual. This is about individual variation, and that human development has always been characterized, and learning has been characterized by individual variation. And it's typical. And we have to make sure that we expect that all the children in the classroom are not going to be in the same place where all the others are, and that we want to see that variation, and we want to honor that variation and those abilities, and the timing of those abilities. And so two things we need to do as teachers is be able to chart the growth of each of our children and study it and observe how they're growing. Observation is key. And Montessori was someone who was very big on observation. And also be able to look at what their interests are through their through how they interact in the classroom. Also, taking into account their personal family experience, their cultural background. Culture is a very, very important part of human development and how children learn, because their background and their culture is going to impact them in every way. And lastly, early childhood classrooms must be inclusive. So we have to make sure that we're creating opportunities that speak to children with all types of learning styles, but also all types of abilities and all types of developmental milestones. And in 1 minute or less, can you give me an example of an inclusive educational practice, or a practice that celebrates culture and family identity, and a way that we can encourage acceptance of children of different abilities? Okay, somebody put family food activities. So certainly a way to celebrate culture and family identity is to have families bring different types of food that they identify with their own culture, and making it a family event, or having a parent come in. I know one classroom used to do a bread activity, and every child's family would bring in the different type of bread that characterized their family background or culture, and they would have a big family bread event. And also, encouraging children of differing abilities requires that we look again at our room arrangement and make sure that we are making room for children who have differing types of abilities, and that they feel accepted for where they are, who they are, and how they have to interact. I think those are key elements to how we include children, and we have inclusive educational practices. We cannot have this. So one of the things we've learned, I hope, over this time together is that development takes a path, it's continuous, and that children are constantly evolving in their social abilities, their emotional abilities, their physical abilities, and their intellectual abilities. And that how we actually organize our classrooms is going to be a vital aspect to how all of those areas of development are supported. So here's the name of the book that I used as reference, and I recommend. There's a link there for the Red Leaf Press, but I'm sure you can also get it, on an online book. It's a common book, and it's in its second edition right now. Are there any questions I could take in 1 minute to sum up? If not, I'd like to thank everybody for participating today. I hope that the information was useful. I am very impressed with all of our Grow NJ kids enrolled centers and the progress they're making towards incorporating many of the concepts we've talked today into their classrooms and into their work with both the children and their families and the community. And I encourage you to keep up the good work. And I thank you very much for your participation.
Okay, this concludes our webinar. If you can please take a minute and fill out the survey. Thank you. Have a good day.